Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's live stream, live anxiety Q&A with me, Tim Box, Mind Coach. For those of you who don't know me, this is what I do. I'm a one-to-one therapist. I'm a hypnotherapist by trade, and I have a particular way of working that's slightly different to other hypnotherapists, different to other therapies. You might have seen my TED Talk, How to Stop Feeling Anxious About Anxiety. You might have picked up a copy of my book, Clear Your Head, which is all about how to enjoy life without anxiety getting in the way. I've remembered all of those titles well enough, I think. And this is what I do. I've got this YouTube channel as a way of getting out to a few more people, because obviously one-to-one work, you can do so much, but you can't see many people at once. You know, there's only so many people you can see in the week. So this is for you guys to ask me questions, to get answers about anxiety, and hopefully just help get control of it, reduce it a little bit. So if you're in the room, if you arrive in the room whilst we're still live, please say hello. And of course, as always, ask any questions that you might have about anxiety. I'm one of those people that believe that we get the other side of anxiety by understanding it to the point where it no longer scares us. And that's why I think the questions that you guys ask me are probably going to be the most valuable topics for me to discuss, whether that be in a live or in any of my videos, because that's the thing that you don't quite yet understand. I always say understanding is the antidote. So with that in mind, I've got questions on my little sheet of paper here, which you guys have put on my videos in recent weeks. I'm not getting live every week at the moment. I think I will be at some point, but I don't think that'll be till nearer the end of the year. But I'm sort of doing it every 2 or 3 weeks at the moment, so they can build up a little bit. But I'll get through as many as I can. And of course, if you're in the room and you've got a question that you want to ask, then please chuck the question in here, because I'll always try and prioritize the people that are in the room, because you've turned up and here I am. So let's answer your questions, you know. Right, let me just do that. And okay, good evening, Sam. How you doing? Much love from LA. Worldwide, brilliant. All this works. You just have to apply it over and over until you believe yourself. You know what? That's a really good point, Sam. Somebody was saying about how long does it take? I think it was the last live I was doing, and how long does it take to apply this stuff? And you know, what can we expect in terms of the whole period of going from feeling highly anxious to getting the other side of it? And as we say, it is about understanding. So it's about, at what point do you believe, hey, anxiety isn't actually something I need to be afraid of? Because you've probably got lots of experiences of anxiety seeming like it's something you need to be afraid of. So it's about working through those ideas and those experiences. But, you know, repetition, you know, going over and over and over the information until it finally sort of finds a foothold in your belief system sometimes. But I think sometimes what I'm trying to do in my videos is not just bludgeon you with better information. It's also working to invalidate the beliefs that we build up over the years. You know, we're not born anxious. And I know some of us might believe we were born anxious. I've always been anxious. You weren't. You simply learnt an anxious outlook probably before you can remember. Like literally from that really early age, before you have your conscious memories on board. But you weren't born anxious. So our job really is to work out, well, what's got you believing that you need to be this anxious, or that that's your reality, whatever that might be at the time. If we can invalidate that, then the beliefs go in loads easier, because now we've not got those barriers in the way. I think I was talking to somebody, I think I was talking to a client recently, because I don't always bring a client into my exact process, like in terms of when they're saying something, what I'm thinking, because I'm obviously translating it into my terms in terms of what I understand is going on in someone's mind. Sometimes I'll bring them into the process literally, and my process is very much. And you guys that are in the members area of the channel, you'll know this because it's in my full control system breakdown, the online training that's on there. But it's the idea of, we have a certain pattern of thought going on here, which is going to have something to do with anxiety. Let's face it, and we have a pattern of thought that we would want instead. You know, maybe that's being confident or calm or at peace, or whatever it might be. And our mind very naturally, usually, will upgrade. That's what our mind's been doing all of our life. Okay. The only reason it doesn't upgrade when it recognizes something that would be a better strategy for happiness is when we have barriers in the way, those barriers of beliefs. So I always think, if we can kind of take those barriers down, if we can invalidate those beliefs, we open up ourselves to what our mind does brilliantly, which is now taking on the new information, upgrading, and getting us somewhere loads better, hopefully. So yeah, Sam, you're right. It is about getting it in as a belief system, and there's loads of different ways of doing that. But my preferred way is what I would call the easy way. Let's get that part of your mind to let go of why it believed this certain truth in the first place. Allow it to upgrade. Hello, Amanda. Hello, Loz. Thank you for joining. And by the way, if you are joined and something that I say resonates or helps you out, please click the like button. That helps me out. Okay, so let's get into the questions then, because there have been quite a few on the videos recently. And I do apologize for not having as many videos up as I might normally have. It's been a very, very busy time in my practice. I've got to be honest. I don't know what's happening here in terms of, is it something in the air? Is it the state of the world? But I'm probably busier than I've ever been in practice, to the point where I think somebody wanted a consultation, and I'm like, I think I was looking at like end of September or beginning of October, which I don't normally like to get that far backed up with one-to-one clients, because you want to offer a slightly more immediate service than that to people. But that's the way it is right now, unfortunately. But that's why I haven't done as many videos, because I've been trying to get all the sessions in for people without running myself into the ground at the same time. Having done that, always be kind to your mind thing, and look after yourself. I'm just being very careful not to overdo it myself. Okay, so first question. You know what? I'm gonna just cover something that isn't a question, but somebody put on one of my videos. Because the video was about when we're anxious for seemingly no reason, when it just comes out of nowhere, that kind of thing. And the comment was, much easier said than done, but I've lost count how many times I've watched this video as it makes so much sense. And I think this is what you were saying, Sam. It's like we keep going over it until it clicks in there, something clicks in place. But the thing that jumped at me was much easier said than done. I don't think, and I know your CBT practitioners might disagree with me here, the ones that do exposures, exposure therapy. I don't think getting over anxiety is something that you do. It's almost like you learn what you need to learn so that your mind stops doing high anxiety. I don't think it's an activity that you engage in. It's like, here's something I've learned, right, and now I need to go and do this instead. I think it's more about stopping doing. It's like saying, I need to do sleep. Sleep is that thing that happens naturally when we stop doing. And I think that's what we're looking to do here. It's more about information that gets rid of misinformation that's caused us to feel like we're constantly under threat. When we get rid of that, we're not doing anything, when we understand the world differently. And so that's why I think a lot of the time people watch the videos and they're like, so yeah, there's a tip about that. There's a tip about that. So I need to take action on this. And it sort of surprised me sometimes when people said, I've been doing this regularly. And I'm like, what? Hang on, what have you been doing? I'm looking back through the video. What have you been doing? Because it's not about doing anything. It's about understanding this stuff. The videos should, when they're working their best, well, and any therapy when it's working its best, should simply allow your mind to update so that your map of reality looks a little bit different now. It looks a little bit more friendly, not as scary. That's the idea there. So yeah, and by the way, I'm not necessarily thinking these videos will cure every problem in your life. It's just, it might take away certain beliefs that have had you stuck. That's the point of it, I suppose. Anyway, so let's. I want to touch on. Hey, No God, good to see you. Hello, everyone. Having lunch. Caught you out there, yeah. Do you know what? I don't give you as much warning these days, do I? Because I don't give myself as much warning. I'm like, if it's Friday and I've got, you know what? I've got time, I can just do a live. I sort of, by mid-afternoon, I normally know if I'm going to be able to do one of these or not. So apologies if it caught you out. I will get to your question shortly, No God, because there's one of yours you put on the videos that I want to answer today. So I'm glad you're here. But the one I wanted to cover now, one about sleep. Okay, my video on sleep anxiety. I've got a couple of videos on sleep anxiety. But there was one put on this a couple of weeks ago. I'll read it out to you, in fact. I love your advice on sleep, and I've been able to implement it perfectly well for many months. See, this is the thing I'm thinking, implement what? I suppose it's just understanding that outlook, I suppose, rather than having like tips. Until I came across a couple of other videos that I watched, which ask you to get up from bed in case you're unable to fall asleep within 15 to 20 minutes in order to avoid a paired association between your bed and a place of thinking / not falling asleep. Both make sense, yet both feel contradictory whilst implementing. Is there anything you can suggest in this contradictory situation? Okay, the first thing I would say, whatever works for you is what works for you. So don't feel I actually don't think there's a hard and fast right or wrong to go about this stuff. And if getting up, because I actually saw a client the other day who said to me, "Oh, I used to have problems sleeping, but then I was told if you're not getting to sleep within 15, 20 minutes, get up, reset, as it were, sort of go and read something and then go back to bed so that you're not associating your bed with this place where you're struggling to get to sleep." I get that. And that worked for her brilliantly. So you really can't knock it, can you? Because a lot of people have success with that. Now, in the sleep anxiety video, I'm normally talking about, well, just don't worry if you're not asleep. Do you know what I mean? It's like, be really, really happy that you've got 8 hours of doing nothing. Okay. Now, the only reason there's a bad association if we haven't got to sleep in the first 15 to 20 minutes and we don't get up and we just stay in bed is if we're struggling to sleep. If we're saying, "Oh, I'm not asleep yet," and we're getting frustrated and maybe getting down on ourselves and angry about that, then it becomes a struggle. It becomes an unpleasant experience. Yeah. But if we're just happy to lay there and say, "Well, hey, look, I've got 8 hours of doing nothing, all those pressures of work, all the family, the kids running around, I've got no obligations. I can just lay here and just enjoy my time doing nothing," then there's no bad associations being made. What tends to happen is you doze off when you stop creating any stress response, by the way. But even if that's not happening, if you can accept, well, I'm okay sitting here being, just being me, that's good for me, then we kind of, what would you say? We disable the effect of pairing the idea of struggle with your bed. I totally agree. We shouldn't be creating that association, but I think it's in our hands whether we do or not. It's not simply, well, if you're in bed for a long time awake, you're going to do that. It's what do you choose to do with that time? Do you choose to say, "Damn it, I'm not asleep"? Or do you just appreciate the time that you have relaxing and resting and recharging, even if you're not unconscious? So either way, and the answer to that is either way is good, whatever works for you. The person that's asked this question implemented it perfectly well for many months. Just do that then. Whatever's been working for you for many months, do that. I don't think, as I say, I don't think there's a hard and fast right or wrong. Okay. Right. Let me, I see we've got some, Sam, let me get to your comment. This is true. These videos have allowed me to experience the same emotions I would in the past, but allow me to see them from a distance and know I'm safe and will be fine. Absolutely, Sam. That's great to hear. That's great to hear. I'm really pleased videos are helping people, I've got to say. Okay. Carlos, I'm going to come to your comment in a minute, but I did promise No God I would answer his question here. Trying not to sound like I'm racing backwards and forwards and stressing you all out when you're meant to be getting nice, calm and stable advice from me. Okay, No God, this is one you put on my last live Q&A actually. So this was one that, oh, by the way, if you're watching this on playback and you have a question, put it in the comments, because this question I'm about to read out now is one that was in the comments after the live Q&A. I go back and revisit this and see what people have put afterwards, so that if they missed the actual live broadcast, they can still ask their question and I can then answer it in the next live. Okay, right. No God, your disordered anxiety can make us feel as if our life was a prison. I personally felt that way at some point, and the reason is, as you said, Tim, that when we regard anxiety as something to be concerned about, everything that causes us to feel anxious spirals into full-blown panic. Probably many people can relate to that experience. Because of that, we flag everything we experience as something to avoid, up to the point where we kind of lock ourselves in a bubble. Do you have any advice on how to start invalidating those false beliefs that stayed around due to the second fear? Brilliant question. Because again, it's that thing of, I get it. I understand that there's nothing to be afraid of now, but there's still that thing going on. Whenever I feel anxious, it causes anxiety, worrying about where's this anxiety going. Totally get that. Right. Let me tell you what I would be doing if this was what I was getting from a client. Yeah, because that's probably the best thing I can give you here. So I would be looking to work out what has caused you to believe anxiety is something to be concerned about. Okay, now you might know at this point, I know it's not anything to be concerned about. I know no matter how anxious I get about a given situation, I know there's no need to fear my own feelings or my own emotions here. It's not an illness, it's not a disease or a condition. It's just I'm feeling really, really this emotion. Okay. But at some point, you did regard it as a concern because that's why, as you say, it was now spiraling into panic each time. And for those of you that haven't seen my video about the feedback loop of anxiety, what we're talking about is this thing where we're anxious about X or Y situation in our life. Then we get the idea there's something wrong with feeling this anxious. So then whenever we feel this anxiety, we then get concerned about feeling it. That creates more anxiety. Then we get more anxious about the more anxiety. And that just spirals up and up and up into a loop and, goes into space kind of thing. It creates that panic situation. Yeah. So my job here would be thinking, well, let's find out where it was you got this idea from, because there's a part of your mind, for those of you that are members of the channel, member of the crew, or you've heard me talk about this, that has got that idea, right, anxiety is a bad thing. We must fear it. We must steer away from it. And that's why whenever you feel anxious, that part hits the panic button. Danger, threat, that kind of thing. So our job is to say, where did this come from? Now, I tend to think there's 3 ways that we learn something, that we say, right, this is obviously true. One is a voice of authority, one is a personal experience, and one is just reason, like logic. We've reasoned something through. So to give you an example, if the teacher, when we're younger, says, if you mix black and white paint, you get gray paint. And we just believe that because the teacher said it. Okay, that was a voice of authority. In many situations, many of our beliefs come from parents or teachers because we were kind of like a blank page just being written on there. We had no beliefs of our own. Here's what the world's all about. Okay, we said, we've got nothing that contradicts that, so go for it, or, as in this situation, teacher tells me the truth, tells me things that I need to learn, so that's true, isn't it? Yeah. Personal experience, maybe in class where you got to mix paints. You took a bit of black paint, a bit of white paint, and you mixed them together and you're like, oh, look, that's gray paint now. So your personal experience taught you that information. Or maybe you just reasoned it through. Maybe you looked at colors, maybe you compared, maybe somebody mixed, I don't know, I'm trying to think of colors that mix together now. Somebody put blue and white and got light blue. And so in your mind, you reasoned through, well, I bet black and white would equal gray then, wouldn't it? Yeah. So you weren't told it. You didn't find out through experience, but logic just said nothing in my mind that contradicts that idea, that suggests that wouldn't be true. So that's probably true. Yeah. So a little bit of my job here might be, well, where did you get that idea from? Did somebody tell you anxiety was a bad thing to feel? Did you feel really anxious about something in your life and then somebody told you, well, that means you must have an anxiety disorder or something like that? Did you have a personal experience? Like many people, when they get really anxious and that ends up with panic, that's their personal experience. Like, that was horrible. I must steer away. I nearly died. I must steer away from that. Yeah. Or did you just reason it through? Did you think, you know what? I don't think I used to be this anxious about this stuff. So obviously there's something going wrong with my anxiety response, something like that, But working out why that is can be really helpful in invalidating that belief and allowing us to accept new ideas, which, no, God, you've already said, yeah, you get it now. It's like, how do we invalidate them? We give better ideas here. Yeah. So the idea that a voice of authority might have said this is an anxiety disorder, that's the thing I'm dealing with constantly. People that have had anxiety disorders diagnosed, but then nobody tells them what that means. Yeah. So a doctor might say something like, all these physical symptoms we've just tested you for, there's nothing medically wrong. So this is anxiety. And I always think the best thing a doctor could do at that point would be just to add the word just. This is just anxiety. Yeah. Because then at least it wouldn't sound like, oh, by the way, you've been diagnosed with anxiety. I've just diagnosed you with anxiety. Yeah. Because anxiety disorder means a state of confusion. That's what we're saying there. It means that your mind is confused about your emotional responses right now. But that's a transient state. That's temporary. Yeah. So all we've got to do is clear up the confusion. No more disorder. Now we are functioning as we want to function. So there could be that going on. There's a bit of your mind that says, no, somebody of importance told me this. So if you guys have seen my TED talk, I do give you the reasons why doctors aren't the people that we should be listening to for our mental health diagnosis, because it's not their area. They have a limited amount of time with us, a limited amount of resources, a limited amount of knowledge. And I'm not dissing doctors here. I'll be speaking to the doctor next week for various reasons. The doctors have been good to me over the years, but they don't really they're not there to deal with your emotional well-being. Okay. They're there to deal with your medical stuff. And all they can say is, look, I'm aware that all these physical symptoms you've been having can be the result of emotional turmoil. That's what that creates. We go into fight or flight. That comes with its own physical ramifications, doesn't it? Tense muscles, heart beating faster, shortness of breath sometimes, Um, and panic attacks. Yeah, we end up in the bloody hospital, don't we? And they say it's a panic attack, and we're like, oh my god, panic. That sounds like a serious word. Attack. That sounds like a really serious word. Panic attack sounds a bit like a heart attack, doesn't it? And it feels like a heart attack as well. But point being is that what they're really saying is you've come to the wrong place. This is not a medical emergency. This is an emotional response, or emotional turmoil, if you like. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I've answered that question accurately, but I could continue to answer this question, by the way. I could go for a long time on this one. Yeah. But I would be looking to say, well, why have I believed that in the past? Then what does that part need to understand so that it doesn't have to believe that now? So this is why in my TED talk, I spoke about invalidating the word of the doctor, because I know that the doctors are inadvertently telling people you have a problem with anxiety. They don't mean to. What they mean to say, what they're trying to get you to understand is, good news, these symptoms have no medical origin. And you're wondering, aren't you, why do I have these symptoms then? It's because that's what anxiety can do. It's almost like them saying there's nothing wrong, but here's why you think there is. Yeah, that's what they're trying to say. But of course, when they say this is anxiety, you then come away like increasingly anxious now because you've been told you have anxiety. And that's not what they're trying to say to you. So in that instance, the voice of authority, we probably could invalidate that voice. We could say, oh, okay, I've misunderstood maybe, or that particular medical professional gave me something that they didn't realize how that was going to be taken. Yeah, I'm hoping this makes sense. Yeah. Personal experience might have been how you learnt that anxiety was something to be feared. Again, maybe it got to the point of panic. Good thing to know here is panic is not dangerous. Anxiety is not harmful. Nothing about your emotional response is going to kill you. And I know panic attacks feel like we're going to die. That can often be why we set up this extreme fear response about feeling anxious, because we had a panic attack. And now any anxiety feels like the precursors to that attack thing that we worry about, that we fear might have taken us out. That might be the end of us. It's not. It just feels like it is. No one ever died of a panic attack. Yeah, it's just everyone felt like they were going to. And again, the experience might not have been pleasant, but yeah, you know what? We've done unpleasant before. We know how to handle unpleasant. We get the other side of unpleasant and we move more towards pleasant as best we can, So again, it's nothing to be feared. It might be something you'd rather avoid, but it's nothing to be feared. Okay. And also reason might have been where we learned it from, and again, I think that might partially come from the environment that we live in these days, the awareness of anxiety issues. Oh, you've triggered my, my wife Britt was saying she was in a shop posting some of the vintage stuff that she's doing at the moment. And one of there was a lot of young girls in there. And one of them said, can you guys hurry up? I'm getting social anxiety here, and it's like, even the fact that young pre or mid-teen girls know to say that, you could argue that's great. That's awareness, or it could be a bad thing, couldn't it? Yeah. Because I don't remember us when we were kids saying, can you hurry up? I'm getting social anxiety. I don't even remember the word anxious being used, in my circle of friends. It just wasn't a thing, but that would be, anyway, that would be my advice, is to work out why your mind got that idea so that you can help reframe that for yourself. Yeah, that was a really long answer. Sorry, no God. I'm so you've put amazing answers, Tim. Thank you. Okay, I'm glad that was of value, because I hope it hasn't bored the rest of the people on the live. But that one I think warranted, a little bit of a deeper dive. I'm not going to be able to get that one down to a minute for my reels, am I? I was gonna struggle to do that. Right. I'm going to get, Teresa, what I've learned is that anxiety grows if you give it attention. The best treatment is to ignore it. It's hard to do, but it works. Okay, Teresa, yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You're right. The thing that we focus on grows. That's a very valid point. It's almost like the magnifying glass, isn't it? We zoom in on it, and it's like we're using the sun to burn a hole in the table. It does its own damage by zooming in on it. Yeah, I remember somebody used to say anxiety thrives off of your attention, but I'm not so fond of that phrase now, because it sounds like there's a bit of you that is just like, I'll make you pay me loads of attention, and that's not what it's trying to do. It's not got evil intent. But of course, it's like a child. Yeah, if you think of the bit that's doing anxiety is like a child, if you give it your attention and you're like, oh, really? What's that you're saying? What's that you're worried about? Then instantly you cause that child to be even more scared, because now mum and dad are saying this. They say, I gave them this concern, and they seem to be freaking out about it. So obviously it is a concern. I thought it just might be, but it is. It's that old idea. Those anxious thoughts, they're not information, they're not knowledge. It's a question. Are we okay? Are we safe? What if this? Is this okay? And and again, Teresa, I think I would advise, rather than ignoring it, because again, if you ignore the frightened child, it doesn't necessarily help the child calm down. I think it's okay to listen to it, but listen to it without freaking out. Understand why it's afraid. Say, okay, why might we be thinking that way then? Where might that have come from? And why might we now know, as slightly more logical, rational, adulty version of what we're thinking, why might we know why it isn't anything we need to be afraid of? Yeah. The analogy is the classic monster under the bed. The kids saying there's a monster under the bed. Do we freak out about the monster, or do we say to the child, go back to bed? I don't want to listen to it. La 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 la. I'm not listening to you. Or do we actually say to the child, well, hang on. Let's go in your room. Let's turn the light on. Look, there's nothing under the bed. Everything's safe. Because ultimately, our goal here isn't for that part to be ignored or chastised. The goal here is for the child to be able to just lie down and be at rest and at peace and have a nice sleep, probably. So, and how we do that is our own individual way we relate to our own thoughts, things like that. This is why you'll get different methods of doing that, different ways of relating to it. But it's up to the individual, and that's kind of how I would work with an individual client as well, is working on, okay, how do we work that out for you as an individual, because that's what's got to happen here. That part needs to feel heard, understood, and ultimately appeased and calmed, understanding that there's actually nothing to be afraid of. Cool. Lovely stuff. Right, Carlos, I did say I'd come back to what you were saying. Hi, Tim. I thought I was over my intrusive thoughts, but yeah, they changed. Same argument, but different thoughts. Incredible how the mind finds always a way to make me fear them. Any tips? Yeah, right. Okay, I have got some tips, actually. Intrusive thoughts are... Some people call them invasive thoughts as well. Some people call them... I heard a client calling them morbid thoughts as well, because they were quite morbid, the thoughts she was having. I think it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter what nature they are. We think, oh, my mind found the thing that I was afraid of. When I was at peace with the old sort of intrusive thoughts I was having, but then that sneaky part of my mind found the thing, my weakness, the thing that I hate. When actually it's the other way around. The reason why that part is giving you the thoughts that scare you is because these are the thoughts that scare that part. That's why it's saying, yeah, but I get that. Okay, you've calmed me about those things, but there's these things as well, and I'm really worried about these things. And I think the bottom line here is that we need to understand that your mind's job is to come up with all the weird, wacky, wild, and wonderful things that your imagination can create. And a lot of it happens outside of our conscious awareness. So most people have intrusive thought, or have thoughts that other people would call intrusive, all the weird stuff, or the morbid stuff, or why did I think that? But they don't necessarily pay them any mind or attention, and they're forgotten even almost before they arrive, because they're not questioning their state of mind at this time. They're not saying, what does that mean that I thought that? Because they know it's other to their nature. They know they wouldn't want to do that, or don't think it's anything to be afraid of, so they just reject it. The only difference here is that when we've been questioning our state of mind, our emotional state, we suddenly give credence to those thoughts. What does it mean that I'm having those thoughts? But that's the exact reason they come into your conscious awareness, because your subconscious is saying, oh, now normally I would just reject this without bringing it into our conscious awareness, but I know that we're a bit concerned about our thoughts at the moment. I should show this to the conscious, shouldn't I? and brings it forward as something. What do you think of this? Is this okay? What do we think of this? And then, of course, consciously, you're like, oh my God, why am I having this thought? But that's its job, is to do all these things, reject the things we're not interested in, bring forward the things we are interested in. The only difference here, Carlos, is that at the moment, your subconscious has said, aren't we interested in this though? Not in a good way, by the way, but in a kind of, oh my God, that's freaking us out, that thought, that kind of thing. So that's what intrusive thoughts do. But I urge you to think of them as like trailers for movies that you just don't want to see, if you know what I mean. Like when I go to see this to the cinema, we did Barbenheimer recently, by the way. I know you'd be fascinated to hear that. And there were loads of trailers at the start, different trailers at the start of each film, it has to be said, perhaps not unexpectedly. But, you know, maybe one of them we wanted to see, and most of them were like, that looks terrible. I don't think we'll bother with that one. Yeah. And that's kind of what intrusive thoughts are. It's just your mind saying, do you want to see this? Do you want to do something about this? Do you want to get, no? Okay. Throw it away then. You know, you ask anyone about intrusive thoughts, and they'll normally, do you have these thoughts? Do you have these kinds of thoughts? And most people will be, if they really honestly think about it, rather than just thinking that you're joking and muck around with you, they'll be like, yeah, I suppose, now I think about it, I suppose I do. Yeah. And you'll say, well, what do you do about those thoughts? And they'll be like, nothing. And they don't do anything with them, because why would they do anything with them? They're just thoughts. They don't mean anything. And ultimately, that's what people should call intrusive thoughts. Thoughts. That's it. Yeah. Anyway, but Carlos, I'm just catching up on what you said there. Thanks so much for everything. You helped me a lot. I also faced one of my fears, that was going to driver school. Thanks to you. Well done. Driving school. Ah, brilliant. That's so cool. I mean, not because of me, but it's because of you, but well done. No, God, I remember I read something about how the emotions induce certain thoughts and not the other way around, that the thoughts cause the emotion. Yeah. I mean, I think it's bouncing backwards and forwards, isn't it? You know, the thought is ultimately what's causing it depends what we're calling the emotion. I think a lot of people talk about the physical feelings, don't they? The visceral stuff as the emotion. Yeah. And I think, the thoughts cause a response in your body. But then, of course, when we feel like there's something wrong with our body doing this, that causes more thoughts, and it bounces back and forward. It certainly can, can't it? So I do, the mind-body connection. Somebody once said to me, you can't have anything going on in your mind that doesn't impact your body. You can't have anything going on in your body that doesn't impact your mind. And if we remember that, then maybe we're not so surprised by all these feelings and all these weird thoughts and stuff like that. Luke, I have a tough question that I'm not sure I should even ask. Okay, look, we're on 32 minutes, Luke, but if we make this the last one, just chuck it in there, I would say. I don't know how long it takes for the message to come up once you've typed it in. But if I can go for another. I mean, I could literally talk about. This is what I do, is talk about this stuff. So I don't think there's a time limit here on that. But it said, Carlos, welcome to the members area. Welcome to the members area, Carlos. Hope you get some more stuff from that. By the way, if you're at the members area, I do every Monday we go live and do a deeper dive into some things. Because it's always a smaller group, we can have more of a chat. But to be fair, we're doing quite well tonight, aren't we? So Luke, if you want to put the question up, I'll give you another few minutes if anyone wants to add anything else. I won't do any more of the questions on the sheet again, because it seems like I'm in the mood to chat tonight. So any answer could go on for a while. So let's not go there. But yeah, if you've got anything else, chuck it in there. Otherwise, maybe we give it to like 35 minutes. And then if there's nothing that people want to put in there. Luke, there you go. How do I get comfortable with anxiety when I see articles like this? Can you put screenshots in here then? I did not know that. I don't know the chat function on YouTube. I don't know how it works. I'm wondering what the article is going to be now. I'm hoping it's nothing that would require an adult, or YouTube's going to scratch the video for. But you never know, do you? But I'll wait for a bit longer. what is it they say? You know when you're in a good relationship when you can just be comfortable in silence. That's how I know we're there for each other. Um, okay, another one's come in. Luke, if you get that article up, or if you can, maybe you're typing it out or something. Meanwhile, I posted the paragraph. It's not going through. Yeah, I thought it might struggle. No, God, certainly Googling for anxiety stuff often causes more harm than good. Yeah, absolutely. I would, if it's an anxiety article that you're talking about, yes, absolutely. That will. I think there's a problem, right? I did a video on people to unfollow on Instagram and YouTube and things like that, and it wasn't like a list of people, by the way. I wasn't calling anyone out, but a certain type of post that is designed to get you to click on it because it suggests there's some element of threat about your anxiety. So you feel the need to click on it because I've got to get this information, and then of course they present a very dark version of what's going on with us. I like people like I've mentioned this today. I was answering one of the questions in the comments of one of the videos. Somebody saying they follow therapy in a nutshell. That's a good one. Yeah, that's one that will actually give you answers and do what I do, hopefully, which is help you calm anxiety rather than inflate it. You know, you get a lot of clickbait things, which are, you know, anxiety will. Oh, I don't know. A lot of the things that mainly get me are the ones where saying if you think these things, you might have anxiety. You might have an anxiety disorder, and it's sort of diagnosing people over the internet and then telling them that that means they're going to have to struggle for this amount of time, or they're going to have to do this, or they'll always be afflicted with it. And it's just not the case. I've always been passionate about like disavowing people of the misconceptions surrounding anxiety. And again, it's that whole thing, the voice of authority. And what's the biggest voice of authority? An article on the internet, you know, and there's a little written by so and so MD, you know, that kind of thing. But again, I think we've got to take all these things with a pinch of salt because all they are is one person's perspective. You know, they're one person's perspective on what they experience. But I tell you something right now, the work that myself and my practitioners do, we get great results with anxiety. Okay, like properly getting people the other side of it. That's what we're here to do. And I think oftentimes these articles are written by people whose frame of reference is that anxiety is an ongoing disorder. Yeah. Now, our frame isn't that. And I think that's why people get past it because they're not locked in by that belief that it's an ongoing disorder. You know, I had, I might have told you this story before, but I had a situation where I was, when I did my TED talk, it was screened at a place in the town where I did the TED talk, like a few months after it was done, because it was just going to go live on YouTube. And it was like you know, it wasn't this one. There was a dozen people speaking that year, and all the talks were shown over a series of evenings, and then people got the chance to ask questions. So they showed mine, I answered some questions, and then at the end, after the questioning bit, three ladies came up to me, and they were psychiatrists. Okay, now psychiatry for me is like that. Wow, not only did you train to be a doctor, you then trained for a load more years to become a psychiatrist and specialize in mental health. So I'm like, wow, that's amazing. You know, I'm always a big fan of people that put in the hours to study to that degree. But they said to me things, but they were like, your approach is exactly how we're trying to think of it, but we're not allowed to think of it because we always have to have medication involved in the things that we're doing with our clients. And one of them said to me, how many sessions do you do with a client dealing with trauma? And I said, well, you know, 3 sessions, that's my model. That's what I do. And one of them said, how on earth can you get results with trauma in 3 sessions? And they weren't, you know, they weren't dissing me. They weren't challenging me. Like, I don't believe you, Tim Box. They were like, tell us how, because our model is if it's trauma, oh, this is going to be months or years that we've got to do the work here. And I didn't have a great answer for them. I got to be, I don't know what I said now. I think I just went, yeah. You know, I didn't want to sound like I was just saying, hey, babe, it's just what I do. But I didn't at the same time, I didn't want to give them just a flippant answer or something that was no use to them. But these days, if somebody asked me that question, because I thought about it afterwards, and I thought, you know, the reason why we get great results with trauma in 3 sessions, because nobody ever told me that I couldn't. I never did that training that said, right, these issues will take this amount of time and these issues will take this amount of time. and that means this, and this equals that, because I've never viewed the human mind as a, A plus B always equals C. Everyone's their own unique human being. And I've also always regarded what's going on as a pattern of thought that we want to change to a different pattern of thought. So that's that's the thing, Luke. I think a lot of times we get information that seems to come from reputable sources, and is reputable sources, don't get me wrong, but the model they're working from maybe, dare I say, isn't going to be the best one to elicit speedy recovery from where you are. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, any anxiety issue is a temporary one, always temporary. Yeah, and our job is to get to that moment where the pattern of thought changes and our understanding gets to the point where we no longer fear our anxiety response, and as a result, no longer vulnerable to any relapse back into anxiety as well. Yeah, it's not just I felt better for a few weeks. Let's get to the point where we make a real positive, permanent change in the way we view this stuff. Okay. Right. So look, I'm gonna call that it there. I'm gonna thank you for all the positive comments everyone's putting in here as well. This is really lovely to read. But Luke, I hope that's helped. There is a question about toxic masculinity. I'm gonna have to come back to that one, I'm afraid, because I'm aware that we're 40 minutes in, and at some point we all have to knock off for the week, don't we? But I wish I could pronounce that username as well, but it just seems like you smashed the keyboard and just gone with that as a username. But I will come back to this on a future live, and maybe even a future video as well, because I remember doing a video on toxic masculinity a long time ago, like properly a long time ago, before I think I was just sitting in my living room, before I had these fancy lights and things like that. But I will revisit this because we haven't spoken about it for a while. But anyway, thanks for joining me this evening. I really hope the things we've chatted about tonight has been of value to you guys. I want you all to have a wonderful weekend. Relax, enjoy time off for the weekend. Hopefully you're not working this weekend. If you are, then enjoy the days off that you have after the weekend. And as I always say, without fail, always remember, be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.